3, 2, 1. How's it going, Georgie?
Going good, man.
Welcome to the first ever episode of Coach Javi's podcast. Now, little disclaimer. I have not come up with a title yet for this podcast or for this show. So if you guys have any good titles, comment those down below or send them to me. Get in touch with me and let me know what you guys think. You got any good titles for me, Georgie?
I already told you mine, but you didn't like them. So.
What was it? See?
I forgot.
Anyway, I got, look, what I got so far is, I had it here in my notes. What I had so far is 90 minutes with Coach Javi. Yeah, 90 minutes with Coach Javi. The Coach Javi show. And that's pretty much it. Those are the only ones I
What
wrote
about the
down.
ones I told you last night?
I don't write any of this stuff down, Georgie.
Well, that's so messed
Anyway,
up.
welcome to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. This is a brand new channel that I'm starting this podcast on. My name is Coach Javi. If you guys don't know who I am, I obviously run the other YouTube channel, Coach Javi, where we talk a lot about anything related to football, really. Specifically training, how to get recruited to play in college, the professional life of a footballer, all sorts of stuff. So the idea behind this podcast is to just go into more depth of all the different things related to football and bring guests on the show with a little bit of experience that can sit down, chat with me for a little bit. We probably won't go too long. This first podcast won't be more than half an hour probably. And we're just trying to figure things out for now. So bear with us because this is the very first episode, but we're going to try and make it as legit as we possibly can. So my first guest on the show is George Chomakov. You guys already know him from watching my channel, watching some of the videos on my channel. Georgie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is George Chomakov. Obviously, you guys see me on the channel. Played soccer my whole life. Obviously, the dreams has always been to be a professional soccer player. I own 2 businesses, Champion Grind and Save Your Style. And I'm originally from Bulgaria, moved to the United States when I was 12 years old. And yeah, here I am.
All right, Georgie. I wrote down a few questions for you today, so they're not like rapid fire, so don't worry. You can take your time and think through them. I didn't want to send them to you before because I didn't want you to have pre-written down answers, I guess. How early did you start playing soccer/football, and where did you play growing up?
My first memories of playing soccer was when I was 4 years old, to be honest. Born in 1990. I remember when Bulgaria was in the World Cup in the United States. My dad was all into soccer at that time, and we were watching the game. And at first, I wanted to be a goalkeeper because the Bulgarian national team goalkeeper.
A goalkeeper, all right. You never told me this part.
This is legit. This is real stuff. He made, I want to say 3 saves, penalty saves, and then Bulgaria. That was actually against Mexico, I think, in the World Cup.
Not true. Well, we're gonna have to fact check you on that. We're gonna just assume that's not a true fact.
At one game, he had 3 saves in the penalty shootout, and then Bulgaria moved on, and then we ended up finishing 3rd in the World Cup in '94 in the United States, and then
you became a fan ever since, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, since then I've always been in love with the game, and right after that game finished, I told my dad we had like balloons around the house, and he would just like throw the balloon at me, and I would like think I'm a goalkeeper and I'll be saving the balloon thinking it's like a ball. But yeah, that was the first memory.
That's interesting because you are a center mid. This is what you chose to do growing up. Now, how early did you become a center mid? Was that like pretty early on, or was that after, when you were already in college? How early did you decide that was the position that you were going to stick to?
When I was in Bulgaria, I played as a left back originally. That's where I started. And I came to America, and I didn't really play too much when I first came just because I didn't know anyone, and I would just kind of stayed at home. And once I started playing for a rec team, that's when the coach was like, all right, you can kind of do whatever you want, play anywhere, and then kind of solidified being a center mid. And then from there to high school, center attacking mid, more of a forward type of a player. And then once I got to college, that's where I kind of changed into more defensive midfield player and defensive midfield player to box. And yeah.
See, that's funny because we make fun of you a lot for not shooting because for some reason you don't like to shoot the ball. Yeah. I know partially it has to deal with you've had some injuries in the past, and obviously there's always a little bit of a fear factor of taking lots of shots and doing your groin again or whatever. Why don't you like to shoot? Besides that,
I just love the assist more. I guess like an easy tap in, finding your teammate for an easy tap in is just more enjoyable to me. Obviously, the injuries have played a big part just because Once you kind of like, if you're used to shooting a lot and then you have the surgery or a big injury and you kind of don't play for a while and then you come back and you try to be the same type of a player, you might re-injure it, and you kind of mentally in the top process where like, oh, I might just mess up my groin again, I might mess up my knee again. And then once you develop the habit, which is not a good one, once you develop the habit, you kind of like stay away from shooting or stay away from those.
And we'll get back to the injury component, because I know there's a lot of people probably who are going to watch this or who could use the advice of coming back from an injury, how to deal with that, the mental component. So we'll get back to that. But speaking of the mental component and the confidence aspect, that is one of the biggest questions that I get on the channel is, how do you mentally prepare for a game? Or when you're in a game and you're in the thick of it, how are you so confident within your position, and how do you not panic every single time you get the ball? So,
before a game, I think for me personally, obviously everybody's different. Every player has a different, philosophy on this. But for me personally, I like to have a routine. And once you develop that routine from time to time, and you kind of keep doing it over and over and over, you develop those habits and you feel more confident as you do that. So, having a routine really helps me out. And speaking about the game, obviously when you start a game, for me, the most important thing is the first few passes, first few touches. I never want to start off on the wrong foot. I make the simple pass, maybe 2-3 simple passes, and then from there your confidence builds up, and then you start taking more chances. But it's all about building up on your confidence throughout the game. Obviously, some games you're gonna have more mistakes than others, but it's all about how how mentally you bounce back after you make a mistake. Because everybody's gonna make a mistake, obviously,
right.
But it's all about what you do after. That kind of shows your character and shows what kind of a player you are.
Yeah, that's one thing that I like to point out a lot during the training sessions and during the games is don't dwell on your last action. So as soon as you make a pass or as soon as you do whatever it is that you're doing, start thinking about the next action right away. So whether you made a mistake, if you made a mistake, don't think about it, because you're going to probably make another mistake the next time you get the ball. But as soon as you pass that ball, you start thinking, okay, what is my next action? What do I have to do to get it right? So let's go back to your routine. You said you have a routine. Walk us through what your routine is, maybe the day before the game and then kind of leading up towards kickoff.
Obviously it depends when we have kickoff. Usually it's later on, like 6-7 p.m. But usually it's on Saturdays and Premier League is on. I like to wake up fairly early, kind of stretch, get my mind right, make breakfast, which consists of just fairly simple stuff, oatmeal, honey, just mix it up, and I really enjoy that on game day. And watch a few games, stretch. Maybe have a jog throughout the day, walk around throughout the day for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then obviously you have lunch with the team. And then from there, it's just music in the locker room, kind of getting in my own head, have a playlist. And like I said, mentally getting ready. Once you step on the field, you want to have a few good passes with teammates, kind of joking around, loosen up a little bit. And then from there, from the warm-up, it's more of a group-focused thing that the whole team does. Yeah, it's just preparation. Once you get into the warm-up aspect as a team, that's when the whole team aspect becomes really important.
Yeah. Do you eat the exact same thing every single time, like before the game? Do you, when you're at home? Because I know the team meals are pretty much the same almost every single game, because you want that consistency factor and it builds the routine. But you personally, like the night before or the day before, do you have a specific meal that you always have to have, or do you just are you just cautious to have certain foods?
A day before, I really don't have anything set. I like to have a lot of carbs a night before game. I'm trying to stay away from meat as much as I can now, kind of changing up my diet. But the morning of a game is always oatmeal and honey. That's like the one thing. Yeah. And then I have banana and peanut butter as the day goes on right before we have the team lunch. But those are the two things that has to be on game days. And if I don't have it, it kind of puts me off.
Throws you off a little bit?
Yeah, it's a bit weird. Once you get into the routine and something goes off and something goes wrong, and it just kind of throws you off.
Yeah, that's same here with me. Is when I have games, I usually like to have something really, really light on the stomach, something that I know is not going to mess up my stomach, so I don't go into the game and there's a possibility that I'll feel sick or anything like that. So and that obviously depends on your game schedule. If you're playing 2 or 3 games a week, you probably don't want to be having the same thing 2 or 3 times a week. But if you're only playing, on Saturdays or whatever, then yeah, it might be a good idea to have the same meal. And not just that, but just the routine is really important, because getting into a good routine and good habits before the game mentally, it just makes you feel a lot more calm. And you have to find out what works for you. Everybody has a different routine. Some people have some crazy routines, or some really, really weird stuff that's, special to just them. But yeah, getting into the routine is crucial. Now there's obviously lots of competition when you're playing against some very, very good teams, but how do you deal with the competition within the team? The people fighting for your spot during training every single time, making sure you try to fight to not just get into the roster, but to also get into the starting 11.
I mean, it's, you have to embrace it. You can't always be like, oh, he's looking out, he's trying to take my spot, I'm not going to pass him the ball. It's a team game. In the end of the day, you want your team to win. So you compete, you try your best, and you want your team to win, whether it's the small-sided games or 2v2s, 3v3s, whatever you're doing within the training session. You want to be a team player. You never want to be one of those players on a team where, he's playing over me and, kind of dwell on it and be negative towards everybody else. Because once you have a teammate like that, it's like a bad apple in the locker room, and it kind of goes throughout the whole team.
Yeah.
And
you can tell right away.
Yeah, you can tell right away. But yeah, for me, it's obviously some games I'm going to play, some I'm not. It is what it is. It's up to the coach, but it's up to me to do my best and to show up every single time and to be a team player and to be a leader, just like everybody else. And once you have that chemistry within the team, that's when you can win the league and cups and everything else.
Yeah, I think you have to, the way I look at it is, you don't have to be okay with the fact that maybe, you might be sitting on the bench for the time being, but you do have to accept it. You have to accept that that's your role. And then whatever your role is within the team, you have to play that role to the best of your ability. So if you get benched for a game, for example, you have to be one of the most supporting teammates on the bench, cheering your teammates on and just being ready for your opportunity. Because what happens is a lot of players get upset that maybe they didn't make the starting lineup, and then the whole game they're on the bench, and you can visibly see, just their body language is just awful. And from a coach's perspective, if you're upset that you're not playing and you're just going to be on the bench sulking and not just doing anything, you're just in a negative attitude, it's going to make me want to not play you. Yeah. So what I tell players is like, hey, listen, you might be on the bench this game, but that's only for this game at the moment. If, you do get called on in the 50th, 60th minute or whatever, and you have a good performance, and then you go back to training and you play well, next week you can be in the starting lineup. So you don't have to necessarily be okay with it. You don't have to say, okay, I'm fine being a bench player, but at the same time, you do have to accept it and then play the role however best you have to play it. So moving on with that, what is a piece of advice that you would give players who are, maybe are not in the starting 11 yet, or maybe some of the younger players on the team looking to break into the team? Just some advice to those players to how they can, improve their chances of being in the starting 11.
Just keep working. I mean, it all comes to your work ethic. Some coaches are going to look at you different. Other coaches are going to say you're good enough. Some are going to say you're not. And in the end of the day, the game is all about opinions. So what you want to do is, what you can do for yourself. And that's showing up every single day, good attitude, showing up to training, doing your best, being a teammate. And sooner or later, you're going to get your chance. And when you do get your chance, make sure you're mentally and physically right to take it fully. And then from there, you can, you never know. Maybe start next game, maybe start the next few, maybe start the whole entire season. So all it takes is 1-2 games to get into good form, to get, the confidence back. Obviously, nobody wants to sit on the bench, as you mentioned, but, it's just all part of it. Everybody goes through it at some point of their life, whether it's through injuries, whether it's a better player comes in, or the team is not doing well, so the coach needs to change it up. There are just so many things that go on within a team throughout a season where, you just have to be ready at all times, no matter what. Yeah.
And I think the important thing to note is that there's no secret. A lot of players are asking me, what specific drills should they do, or just very specific questions about how they can be in the starting 11. And the reality is there's no secret. If you're not in the starting 11, or if you're not feeling like you're playing at the level you should be, then go ahead and get some extra training. Take a look at what you're eating. Is your nutrition and your diet good enough to be at that level? Take a look at all the different aspects, not just the ones on the field, but all the different aspects of why you might, not be starting or might not be playing, and just control the controllables. Whatever it is that you can control, make sure that you're in charge of that. And at the end of the day, excuses really have no place because nobody's going to care about your excuses. It doesn't matter if even for example, injuries. People who are saying, I'm still trying to get back from injury. At the end of the day, the excuses are, how can I say this? Nobody's going to care about your excuses because at the end of the day, you have to show what you can do on the field. So I also do know a lot of players who are, when I talk about injuries, who are like lazy to do their rehab, who just think that all they have to do is just sit at home and not do anything. And then they're just going to heal up. And you'll see the best players, as soon as they get injured, they're doing their rehab right away. And they're going to the athletic training room. They're checking in with the trainer every single day. What can I do today to improve? So just basically what I'm trying to say is control what you can control. But there's really no secret other than just working hard. But you talked about it a little earlier, is the chemistry within the team. Like, if there's a player who's upset that they're not playing, or a player who's just comes in training every single day with a bad mood, how does that affect the team and the team's performance?
Well, when you see somebody just, a negative mindset straight from the get-go, it kind of goes through every single person. Everybody kind of gets frustrated with one another. And especially when you go into those small-sided games, or people keep messing up in like the small drills that we do, the passing drills, and people are not taking it as serious as they should be, or they're not focused or mentally there, and are kind of dwelling on like, I'm better than this guy and he's playing, or whatever the excuse is. And you can kind of see everybody get frustrated with one another. And then at one point, once you are playing those team games and somebody does make a mistake, you kind of go off on them a little bit more, and then they come back at you, and then it's kind of like the whole team is going at each other, which is fine. Obviously it's soccer, at very competitive level, so you are going to have those arguments and fights or whatever, but you never want it to go beyond that. Once it goes beyond that and it destroys your chemistry, and then it goes beyond the training session, and then you're fighting in the locker room, or you're fighting in throughout the game, in actual games where it actually matters. And obviously the arguments are going to happen, but you can't dwell on the negative people, because once that happens, it goes through the whole entire team, and then the chemistry goes down, and then you're kind of just like, everybody's just fighting and saying stuff they don't really mean, but it just comes out, and it's just not good.
And the funny thing is you can tell which are the players that, for example, nobody wants on their small-sided teams for certain games. Like when I was in college, I remember if I was one of the captains picking the teams, I would almost always, for the small-sided games, pick the defenders first on my team. I'd take the first 2 or 3 defenders on my team, because I knew some of the guys who are more attacking-minded are typically the guys who are less likely to work hard defensively. And I take the defenders because that's just what they're used to. So, and it's not just by position, but by attitude, by personality, you can kind of tell which players are the ones that nobody wants on their team, because they know they're not going to work hard, or they have a bad attitude or whatever. And in those small-sided games, it's usually not necessarily the best players that win those, but it's the hardest working team, the team that's made up of the hardest working players. And that translates obviously into the 11v11 game. Is sometimes you'll see the teams like back in the day when Real Madrid had all those superstars back in the day, and they just couldn't get the job done. So I think that's kind of interesting and important to note. And what I like to say is, I like to tell people that sometimes I see players who are really good, and they might be the best player on the team. And the problem is that they know that they're the best player on the team, and their attitude is just, I'm better than the rest of my teammates. And the problem with that is that if they're not as good as that player, they start getting upset at their teammates. And it's just like, I pass the ball and they lose it every single time, and it's just frustrating. At the end of the day, you're stuck with those players, whether you like it or not. For the time being, that's your team. So if you have that attitude of like, I'm better than all my teammates and they're just weighing me down, you're going to look bad, because in a game, you guys aren't going to do very well. And if you guys aren't doing very well, you're not going to look good as a player. So I think that's a big lesson as far as like leadership goes, is you have to bring your teammates up. Whether you're a good player or a bad player, you have to keep that positive attitude. You have to be able to encourage your teammates, because they're only going to make you better, or they're only going to make you worse, depending on your attitude. So, that was important. Let's go back to the injuries. So your career, Georgie, has been plagued with a lot of injuries. That's fair to say. A lot. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. People don't realize is that a lot of kids are like, oh, I want to be a professional soccer player. but I don't have a backup plan. But they're like, well, I'm going to make it, because if I have a backup plan, that means I'm not really fully committed.
Yeah.
Well, you never know. Somebody's going to come in with a 2-foot tackle, or, you know, you're going to tear your ACL out of nowhere. You can never know. So you always have to have a backup plan. That's one. But I think the more important topic we should focus on is just overcoming the injuries. When do you say, all right, it's time for me to give up, hang up the boots? Or how do you get yourself into that mental state of, okay, I've been here before. Now I got to get past it just like I have in times before.
I think for me, regarding the injuries, is always questioning myself, can I do it again? Can I come back? Can I be just as good or better? It's always, obviously after you get hurt, if you have surgery or you have to sit out for a while, the first few days are the worst because you're depressed. You kind of like thinking to yourself like, man, not this again. No, I have to sit out for like 5-6 months. No, I have to get surgery. No, I have to go to all these doctors. Nobody wants to do that. But after all that is all done and said, and you kind of are on your path to recovery, you have to, it just depends. Everybody's different. Like for me, like I said, I always question and put to myself, can I do this? Can I come back again? It's kind of like a challenge for me, for myself. And I set it for myself, and I set the standard high, and, set a goal. Can I do this? And then I go out and do my best to get back to where I was or better. And obviously sometimes it's tougher just because after you get one injury, another one comes, and that's how it usually goes. Once you get a bigger injury, and you get a hamstring or a quad or something else goes, your groins, and it just kind of goes from one to the other. But it's all about coming back. It's like a challenge. Some people that they just don't want to. They don't have the fire inside. They're just it just kind of burns you out. People don't realize that when you set a path to be a professional soccer player, you have to put the work in. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to go and train for 1 hour. No, it's not going to work like that. There has to be gym sessions. The food has to be right. There's so many different aspects in becoming a professional athlete that a lot of people think it's like, yeah, I want to do this. Yeah, it looks good.
Because I think a lot of them only see like the YouTube highlights, right? They see like Messi dribbling past players. They see all these players doing all these fancy tricks. Neymar doing all these fancy tricks, and they're like, that's what I need to do in order to be a professional athlete.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks good on YouTube. It looks good on TV. But what they don't see is the hours and hours of work they have to put in behind the scenes. And there's so many injuries. Everybody gets injured at some point or another. Some are bigger than others, and that's just part of life. You have to accept it. If you, like we said earlier, if you keep dwelling in the mistake or dwell on the injury, you're just gonna sit at home. You're gonna cry about it, and that's gonna be it. You're not gonna get anywhere. So, you have to set challenges for yourself. Come back stronger, better than ever. Somebody that I've always watched because of injuries has been like Kobe Bryant. He had the Achilles, he had the shoulder, and just watching his type of stuff and the way his mindset works really helped me through the tough times. And you have to look at other motivation factors outside of yourself at some point while you're injured, just to see how they did it. Because, if you're just on your own, you're going to be depressed, you're going to be overthinking everything. And you have to go to outside sources. Obviously, you have family, friends, but even sometimes your family, they're not going to understand what you're going through, just because they've never been through something like this. So it's all about finding, similar people, similar athletes, professional athletes or amateur athletes, whoever it is, be in a similar position as you. They've been through stuff like this, and that can help you out mentally, because it's pretty much mental. It's all mental. Soccer's, most of it's a mental game. How you come back from an injury, how you recover from a mistake, everything about it is mental. Yeah. So I think that's a very important thing to think about. One
thing I want to add to that as well is I have a kind of like a motto, have like a life motto, or have something that you can look back when you're in your lowest moments or when you're feeling down. Have something that's gonna bring you back up. And like you said, sometimes that means going on YouTube and watching some Kobe Bryant clips and maybe like some documentaries, or just looking at other athletes and how they recover from injury. For me, for example, and this is more general, this is not necessarily for just injuries, but for me, there's this one quote from Zinedine Zidane, who said, once I cried because I had no shoes to play soccer, and then I saw a man with no feet, and I realized just how lucky I am. And so every time I ever feel down, or ever I feel like, I'm injured or whatever, things aren't going my way, I take a look at that quote, and then I just realize, there's really no reason why I should be complaining whatsoever. So, you know, if you need something like that, obviously find whatever works for you, find whatever motivates you to get back on it. But yeah, and then that's also just a big part of how we differentiate, you know, the elite level athletes and the people who just give up at some point, is how bad do you want it? You know, like how after injury after injury after injury, when most people would say, okay, I think my body's telling me, or I think there's a sign that's saying that I should stop. It's, if you really want it bad enough, then you'll get back at it like it's another day at work. Like, you know, you're coming back into work on Monday. Personally, for me, for example, one of the reasons why I stopped playing is I realized a little later on that I was not as passionate about it anymore. So I started getting injured, not just because randomly I was getting injured, but because I wasn't taking care of my body as much as I should have. And I wasn't willing to put in that work to take care of my body. And so I would get injured a lot easier, and I wouldn't be doing my rehab. And then pretty soon, eventually, and I was already coaching at this point, so I realized, you know what, I was looking forward more to the coaching side of things than I was to the playing side of things. So then that's when I kind of realized, you know what, even though my whole life I was told, man, you're a really good soccer player, you should go pro, you should go pro, you should go pro. At that moment, I realized, you know what, it's okay for me not to become a professional soccer player. One, because, you know, it's going to take a lot of work that I'm really not willing to put in, because I found a passion that supersedes that, which was coaching. And for me now, obviously with the YouTube channel and everybody can see, and coaching is my real passion. So it just comes down to basically how bad you want it. But I appreciate you sharing that, Georgie. We're gonna wrap up the podcast here, but we got one more question to just wrap this whole thing up. Is one piece of advice that you would give to a younger version of yourself?
Just keep moving forward. Don't dwell on the small stuff. The reason why I say that is because when I was younger and I went to my first ever tryout for a bigger team, and I didn't make it. I got cut. I was one of the last few people that stayed on throughout the tryout. They kept cutting people throughout, and I was the last, I was the fifth person. And once it was down to 5, I thought I was like, you know what, I'm feeling good, I'm gonna make it. And then I got cut, and I kind of questioned why, and I said it's so because the coach didn't like me. You know, it was just like I blamed everybody else but myself. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when I got home, my dad came with me. I got home, and I literally just stayed in my room for 3 weeks. I did not move. I wouldn't eat. Like, I was just like in depression, and I hated everything and was just blaming everybody but myself. And, you know, that was the moment where I kind of realized that I love this game and I want to do everything I can in order to make it. And so in these situations, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and kind of decide which way you want to go. Mm-hmm. Are you going to blame everybody else, or are you going to look at what you can do, what you can improve, and look at yourself first rather than blaming everybody else? So I think that was a really important moment of my life, to where I decided that, you know, I'm going to do everything I can. Stop being negative. Stop blaming everybody else. In the end of the day, everybody has an opinion. So whether you believe it or not, it's up to you, but they're still going to have their opinion. So it's all about what you think about yourself, how hard you work, and what you put up every single day in order for you to succeed. And if you're just depressed, sitting at home, blaming people, then you're really not going to get anywhere. And you realize that it's a lot easier to kind of just blame everybody else rather than look at yourself. And that's what I did, and I'm glad I did, because it was a really important moment of my life.
That's a good piece of advice. For me, it would be to ask a lot of questions. Just ask questions with an open mind, not in a negative way, and not just because you want to question things for no reason, but question things with the purpose of trying to get as much new information as you possibly can. So when a coach tells you to do something, ask why. Not just do it because they're telling you to do it, but ask them why specifically, and why it's going to make them why it's going to make you a better soccer player. And that doesn't have to be with soccer. That can be with just anything in life. But don't just believe everything that people tell you, but question it. You know, gather data, do your research, and then come up with, you know, your own facts at the end of the day based on what you found. And ultimately, it's going to just develop your knowledge base and your philosophy and your beliefs. And I think I could have used that a lot more when I was younger. I think if I would have asked a lot more questions, I would have had an advantage over a lot of other people, and I would have been I would have just learned a lot more than what I did now. I'm not saying that I haven't learned a lot, but I think it's important, especially for the younger athletes, to question everything in a positive way, with the idea that you're gonna take everybody's viewpoints and perspectives equally, and it's gonna make you a better person. But that's it for this podcast, the Nameless Podcast. Georgie, still have to figure out a name.
That's a good name.
The Nameless Podcast.
There you go. Easy. Problem solved.
So we'll see what people say in the comment section if they have any good ideas. And you said, what was yours?
Overtime
with Coach Javi.
Yeah, Overtime with Coach Javi.
That's a good one as well. And I was saying 90 minutes with Coach Javi. So we'll see. Even though it's not probably ever going to be 90 minutes. Maybe one day. Maybe I'll get to that Joe Rogan level. Who knows?
Maybe. Never know.
But I appreciate you guys joining us. Stick around. Obviously, subscribe if you're new. And we're going to be uploading a lot of podcast episodes hopefully soon, and different clips, so you guys can have a wealth of knowledge and perspectives of the people that I'll be bringing on. Obviously, George is going to be probably a regular here, because I'm not going to have that many guests.
I'll be the director. I'll direct everything.
You'll direct everything. You'll be in the back pulling up all the clips and stuff on the TV. Appreciate it, Georgie. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.